Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Today's presenters lead ADR Vantage, a premier conflict resolution firm with over 30 years of experience partnering with federal agencies, private companies, and many other organizations across a wide array of industries. ADR Vantage offers this session in partnership with Graduate School USA, and they recently launched a brand new series of virtual conflict resolution and mediation courses that you'll hear more about in this session. Tara Taylor is the managing director, and Melinda Ostermeyer is the director of programs for ADR Vantage. Both are conflict resolution and organizational development experts, as well as certified coaches, and together they bring over 55 years of consulting and training experience. Tara, Melinda, over to you, my friends.
Thank you, Amanda. Melinda, saying 55 years sounds crazy, right? You
Well,
should
since
have been
they're all
older.
yours mostly on your side, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
not at all, not at all. Hello, friends. Hello, everyone. We are so glad you're here. If it's your first time joining ADR Vantage or Graduate School USA for a webinar, then boy, you picked the right one to start with. We've got a packed session with lots of information. If you're just coming in, please feel free to drop the name of your organization into the chat, and or the sector or industry that you work in would be fine as well. Also take a scroll up and see that we've got quite a spread of organizations represented here. And what I always say is conflict is everywhere. So regardless of what type of organization or what sector you're in, we are very confident that you'll get some good tips and tools to walk away with today. So before we sort of dive into the deep topics, I would love for everyone to give me an emoji reaction to a question. So if you don't know about emojis, click on the three dots called More, and you'll see a little button with a heart that says React. You can select from all the emojis to answer this question. Describe your gut reaction when you hear the word conflict. Ooh, I see clapping. I see surprise faces, crying, laughing. Ooh, lots of clap, lots of surprise. I think that's a surprise face, Melinda.
Exactly.
Laughing tears.
Yeah.
Oh, what a mix. What a mix. Maybe that surprise face is like, I don't know what's going on. Thumbs up for conflict. Ooh, yes, I saw somebody in the chat put their scary, shocked face. Yes, yes. Yeah, lots of those. Great. So feel free to keep selecting your emojis, right? Because we all do have a gut reaction when we hear the term conflict. And what's interesting is there were lots of different emojis there. Conflict is pretty complex and layered, yet all of our brains already decided how we feel about it, right? Our brains are already heading in a certain direction: surprise, fear, sadness, shock, clapping for it, right? Yeah, joy, you've got the scary ghost face, right? So, we're going to talk about how our brains start to very, very quickly make some decisions regarding conflict and how that plays out in the workplace. So, here's something that surprises a lot of people. It certainly surprises me. And let me stop for just a moment. Melinda and I will be co-facilitating this together. So you might hear us tap in and conversate with one another. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. We will get to them. We're going to close down the chat in just a moment or two, so you won't necessarily have access to that until later on. But feel free to use the Q&A if you need to. All right. So something that surprises you, right? I was always surprised by the statistic that 70% of workplace conflicts aren't actually about what people think they're about, right? They're often about lots of other things underneath. And in the next hour, you'll see exactly why we say this and why that statistic is true. And you'll leave with a framework that you can use in your very next difficult conversation or conflict situation. Absolutely. Thanks to those of you who are still giving us the emoji. So, interestingly, even though we're focused on conflict at work today, all of the stuff we're going to talk about applies just as much to difficult conversations and conflicts you have at home or in your community or with your extended family, right? It applies everywhere. The brain science doesn't change just because you're outside of the office. So, whatever role you have in whatever organization, you're in the right place to really learn a lot today about how to motivate others, how to handle conflict better, or just maybe manage yourself better in tough moments. So, Melinda, why don't we hop into the agenda? Very, very quickly today, we're going to start with our welcome and our opening, just like we did. We're going to move into what motivates each of us and what threatens us from a brain science perspective. Then we're also going to review a well-known neuroscience approach to understanding ourselves and others in conflict. It's called SCARF. You'll learn more about it. And even if you've heard about it, you'll probably learn even more today. We'll do a few practice scenarios in real time. And then we'll end with a Q&A so that you all can ask questions, and we'll give you a preview of courses that we offer that dive even deeper into this topic and into other conflict related coursework. So this is a really practical course also. By the end of the hour, you are going to walk away with a 5-question diagnostic tool that you can use in any conflict, work or otherwise. You'll also get a personal strategy for managing your own stress triggers that really taps into the brain science as well. And you'll have a clear picture of what your next learning steps might be with some things that we provide. All right. So that's where we're headed. That's the game plan. Hopefully, everyone feels good about that. And then we are going to move right into some interactive components. If you've never used a poll in a Zoom uh, training or webinar like this, you're going to get your first poll right now. We're going to dive into what motivates and threatens us and how our brains really react in that moment. So, Shige, if you would launch our first poll, you'll also see it on the slide deck. And if you've never done a poll, you can actually move your cursor and click on the option, what motivates you most at work? Just personally. We're going to limit you to a single choice. I know that's tough, but pick the one that you think most motivates you at work. And if you're not working right now, think back to your last job or the one you want and answer it from there. I'm going to give you maybe another 10 or 15 seconds. Pick just one. If you're just joining us, hello, hello. We're doing a poll in real time that you can participate in.
Yeah.
Love it, love it. Lots more people
Yeah.
joining us.
Yeah. It's that hard, forcing that hard choice.
Yes. Terrific. Okay, so here are the results on screen based on the roughly 160 of you who are here, right? And it looks like being part of something meaningful with others is pretty much the strong front runner, Melinda. Pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
It doesn't surprise me because we have a lot of federal workers here, which are tend to be mission-driven folks, and that links to that. So not totally surprising.
Yep. Number two looks like having control over how I do my work, the autonomy there, absolutely. And right behind it with number three is being recognized for my contributions and then knowing what's expected of me. Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting that the last one came in pretty low, feeling like I'm treated the same as others. So that concept wasn't quite as important as the others, even though I'm sure most of you wanted to select more than one. So yeah, this is really good, interesting feedback. So let's stop sharing. Yeah, that's great. And if you do have questions about the tech piece in the Q&A, Shige's there and he can certainly answer those for you, those of you who want to use the poll. If worse comes to worse and you can't do the poll, then just put the letter of the choice you see on the slide into the chat for now, but we're going to be moving and using those polls as we go forward. So now that you kind of know the top results that we had, I think I want to highlight a few things as we line up this concept of brain science related to conflict. So, Melinda, if you'll skip ahead to that next slide, right? So, what really motivates us is actually a little different than what a lot of us assume is true. So, interestingly, traditional assumptions tell us people are motivated by external things, right? Like money and bonuses and fear of getting in trouble or consequences that are negative at work, right? And Daniel Pink, if you've ever heard of him, he's a renowned author and speaker on behavioral science and psychology. He calls this motivation 2.0, right? But actually, those assumptions aren't really true. Research tells us that this approach works fine for routine, kind of mechanical tasks, things like data entry or production line work, right? Those type of jobs may be motivated extrinsically by the pay or the bonuses, but that's only when the path is clear and the work is repetitive, right? Which is not really what anybody I saw in this chat does, right? Most of us do more complex, creative, or collaborative work. And that approach, giving external, money and bonuses, it kind of backfires and reduces performance, actually, if we only focus on the extrinsic factors, right? So the takeaway from this is, hey, a lot of us traditionally assume money and those external things are what really motivate people. But interestingly enough, for the work we all do in today's workforce, that doesn't work. So once a task requires judgment, problem solving, or working with other people, external rewards often backfire. And what really matters for that kind of work are the intrinsic factors that you all just voted on in the poll: recognition, knowing what's expected, having control, doing meaningful work with others, being treated fairly. So, we're going to zoom in to those five intrinsic factors that were in the poll using something called the SCARF model, and we'll kind of bring it to an interpersonal level for each of you. We're going to talk about what's happening in the brain when people feel either engaged or threatened, especially at work, and how this knowledge can help you communicate more effectively, supervise better, collaborate, and reach better outcomes. Melinda, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I think we're going to do another emoji.
Well, yeah, I would love to know how many people have heard of scarf before. You might, there's varying degrees. I know a lot about it too. I don't know anything about it, but how many folks have heard of it at least? Yeah, and a thumbs down if it's completely new to you. Only thumbs up. Great. Well, you all are going to be able to, a couple of open faces. I love that. All right.
Oh, look at all
Wonder
those.
what
Look
those
at all
are.
those.
Look at those. I don't know what that, those are a little scary. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, because you're like, maybe I know about it, but maybe not.
Yeah, all right. Well, we're going to forge forward. If you're here, we assume you want to learn more about it or at least confirm what you do know. So, I want to talk a little bit about what's behind this. As you know, David Rock, if you know Scarf, you probably know the name David Rock, who is a guru in the neuro leadership field in particular, has done a tremendous amount of research. And he has really focused on the fact that humans are really driven by what we perceive, and that word perceive is pretty important, as social threats and rewards. We don't like threats, clearly, and we do like rewards, right? Which is not really surprising, but it is what he focuses on. It has been, the SCARF model has been used for a lot of years by a lot of different organizations and has really been validated, large and small, in terms of the organizations that have used it and the folks that have done that. There is a key principle here, which are the brain treats social threats in the same way that it treats physical threats. So if you are being chased by a rabid dog, right? It affects you in a significant way, just as if you had somebody in your life that's important that said, we really need to talk tonight. Okay. Right? That probably in our minds, for most of us anyway, are going to trigger some threat response as if that. So the theory, you minimize threats, right? Makes us happy. You maximize rewards, and behavior follows from that, which we'll talk about how it leads to improved or increased higher quality performance. Um, if we can do that, if we can keep our threats low and our rewards high, the behavior that is going to follow is really in collaboration, in higher levels of performance, in our personal well-being. So all of those things are really benefits. So again, I always have to laugh when folks sometimes call these soft skills, right? These are really bottom line performance, behavior related concepts and theories that have held the test of time. So one a threat. We throw these terms around and assume we're all on the same page, which we typically are not. But a threat response is really when something happens and you feel off in your body or your mind. And it really happens immediately in your body. So your body knows that it perceives a threat way before your brain catches up. It happens in like 0.8567 milliseconds or something. I forget what the exact time is, but it is instantaneous, it's biological, and it shows up differently in people because it's all about the way we are hardwired in our brains. So given that this a lot of this course and we're developing a longer course around this, but scarf is a lot about self-awareness, right? You need to figure out when you are triggered, why you are triggered in order to try to do something about it. So we're gonna do another poll, and Shige, if you could pull up the next poll. In your own body, when you are in a threat response, right? Something happens and you're reacting. What is feels the most familiar, i.e., what happens to you first, most intensely that you notice immediately? Does your heart race or pound? Do you start sweating or feeling warm? Does your stomach turn in knots or do that crazy stuff in there? Do your hands and jaws tense up? Do you go foggy or blank? Does defensiveness snap to the forefront, or you do quick responses without thinking? You want to leave, avoid it, shut it down, whatever. So, and you have an opportunity to select all that apply. So, but try
Quick,
to
quick,
think
quick, quick.
what happens first, fastest, foremost, right? All those things may happen to you, but what do you tune in sort of first? If you can limit it to that. So the poll, I assume, is open, and if you can start your selection process, we'll see where this group tends to go.
Yeah, take a quick sec, fill it out.
Yeah, I mean, I could I'll just chat while for me, it's in my stomach and my hand. One of my hands starts to shake ever so slightly
Hmm.
when I'm really when it's going. But that thing happens before anything else. And then my stomach I notice and stuff like that. So I notice it immediately for me. I have a real tell for myself. All right, we're gonna see. All right, it looks like heart racing, pounding, that panic attack feeling, which, ooh, I just had one of those last week. It was not pleasant. Probably, I'm looking down, a lot of 38% on the urge to leave, avoid, or defensiveness, or sort of snippy, snappy responses, and stomach knots. Those sort of came in next. Then it looks like sweating or feeling warm, that being getting that flushed feeling. Followed by, where am I at? 28, 23% mind goes foggy or blank. The older I get, I notice that one's creeping up on me a little bit more
It's
than
all of them
before.
though, Melinda. Like every single one has a significant number.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure people, exercise their multiple choice because your body goes haywire, right? And it is your body is being flooded with chemicals and your body wants you to shut down. It is like threat, stop, shut down, stop it. It doesn't know how to think through to the other end. So it just wants you to run, go up the tree, do whatever you need to do. All right, let's close this one and go on a little bit to talk about the whys here. So, excuse me if I can get this to move. Okay, so we're going to give you a lot of information. There's a ton of this, and some of it can be detailed. What I suggest you do, if you really want to use this model, is write down a scarf and the corresponding words And that is what you really walk away with, is that tool to use that so that you can ask yourself particular questions about what's happening in me, where am I being triggered on these different levels, or what might be happening in somebody else. So we're going to talk about sort of the threat and reward. Again, remember, we've focused on threats, but this is threat and reward. So, this one is around our sense of importance, self-worth, being valued, certainty, our need to predict what happens, right? How in this world of changing, certainty is really hard to find. Autonomy, the sense of control over your environment and what you do and decision making, relatedness, your connection, your belonging, your trusting of the people with whom, in this situation, you work, but again, this works in all different contexts. And fairness, the perception that the interactions and outcomes are fair and equitable as you might define them. So we're going to move quickly. Threats and rewards. I'm just going to, we all have our own.
Melinda, can I just
Yes,
pause you for one quick
please.
comment? Would you step back to that last slide? I
I
just want to
will.
let everybody know that we have an amazing handy dandy quick reference card. So if you're quickly taking a screenshot or a note, I'm going to ask Amanda to drop the quick reference card into the chat. We'll continue to drop it a few more times, but you can download it, print it, save it. Yay, look at all those. See, they
Yeah,
wanted to know.
exactly. I'm
Yeah.
serious. When you really start to pull this apart, it can be complex. So this is what you focus on, right? What's happening in me or others? Where is it on the spectrum? And it very well won't be just one, right? That's when conflict happens. Okay, Tara, can I move on?
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, we're going to go each through one of these quickly. I'm going to share with you, there's a list of a lot of examples, right? For each of these rewards and threats. Somehow I'm
Yeah, it's okay. I can start the first one because we're going to just quickly highlight each one. So, for example, status, right? We gave you an example of a threat, which is like if somebody corrects you in public, our brain gets a little, our status is threatened, right? But if somebody praises us, then we feel like our status is safe and even being rewarded, right? Melinda?
Exactly.
Mhm.
I can pick up here. Unclear expectations, again, certainty. People just want to know the details, right? More and more. Clear goals, example of certainty in terms of being rewarded. Micromanagement, probably most of us have experienced that versus having choice and flexibility in what you do. Relatedness around I'm not around people, I don't see them, I'm stuck in a cubicle all day, I don't know anybody, to inclusion, I know a lot of have social connections at work, either through work groups that I'm on or through friendships that I have. And then favoritism is the last one, related to fairness. And transparency, again, is something in terms of people understanding the rules, or maybe even have been a party to creating the rules or the guidelines and things like that. All right, Tara is going to share with you now sort of the more about the physical stuff and how that impacts us behaviorally, and what we can do around this threat reward system.
Absolutely. So some of you know this, and I'm going to try to kind of offer some new and different information, but also to kind of, bring it on home for you. So if we hop ahead one slide, the limbic system is the brain's threat and reward center, right? It tells us what to pay attention to and what we don't have to pay attention to. Evolutionarily, is that a word? Evolutionarily, it's a big one. It helped us know it helped us protect us, right? From threats, we would detect like what's safe and what isn't safe. So as we evolved as humans, we got very good in the limbic system, right? Our brains got very good at quickly detecting how to protect ourselves. Is this safe? Is this animal not safe? Is this berry or fruit growing out there? Is that safe or not safe? And so we're going to talk a little bit about how our brain perceives the threat mode and the reward mode. So let's hop into our first one. Threat mode, right? The things that we're going, it's not safe. Threat mode kicks in faster, it lasts longer, and it feels more intense than positive feelings. This is called negativity bias. And in general, right, there's a lot of research that shows that unfortunately our brains, right, are more readily tapping into negative experiences. We remember them longer. Again, it kicks in faster. And remember, like all those reactions you had, the heartbeat and the stomach, right? It takes a little while for those to resolve, right, in threat mode. There's a psychologist called Roy, and I always want to say his name the wrong
Uh-huh.
way, Melinda, Baumeister, right?
Right. That's as I understand it.
I
Yeah.
call him the Baumeister when I was researching this in college. Um, but the Baumeister, he is the one who wrote the paper, Bad is Stronger Than Good. And you can Google that and read all about it. But his research basically found that it takes about 5 positive interactions to outweigh one negative interaction. And this is true in work or your personal life, right? So there's an interesting ratio. If there's a negative interaction with your spouse or your partner, right, or your significant other, then it's going to take a lot more to outweigh that. The 5-to-1 ratio is real.
Plays
Now,
into trust. Oh my Lord.
yes,
Yeah,
right?
so many one act of distrust tears down years of trust building. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that doesn't mean that you should feel like, oh, I might as well give up, right? There's ways around this that we're going to get to. But it's important to remember that negative experiences also encode into our memory faster and they're stickier, right? They stay in there longer. Evolutionarily, again, this makes sense, right? Because our ancestors who remembered that, the rustle in the trees means a predator is coming, they survive longer than the ones who didn't remember that, right? So, the Darwin theory, right, of selection was the people who got good at recognizing threats and remembering it were the people who survived. And then we evolved from those people. So that's why negative experiences, it's faster to sink in with us. The bad outweighs the good, unfortunately, and it's stickier in our memories. So in modern workplaces, this really means that even like one single email that kind of sits wrong with you, right? A little sharp back and forth in an email can outweigh like the whole week or the whole month of good interactions you had with somebody. Because our mental ledger, right, is just hanging on to that negative email experience. And we're going to recall it probably more vividly even months later. So, in a threat state, it is much harder for us to listen, collaborate, communicate, think clearly, see that there's possible options out there. And conversely, right, when we're more primed to listen well, collaborate, and communicate and innovate in a reward state. So for all of us, right, it really pays off for us to be in a reward state more often and for the people that we supervise or work with to be in a reward state because then they're primed to do good stuff, to listen, collaborate, innovate, all of that. All right. So, in an effort to break up us talking at you, right, we're going to do a quick activity before our next section and get some live participation going on, right? Because we've been talking at you for a while. So, here's the deal. Melinda, if you'll share this next slide, this is your assignment, right? I want you to think of a song that's like your jam, right? The one that always puts you in a good mood, the one you maybe sing in your car, or you have on in the shower. I know that my daughter has a song that really gets her going when she's getting ready for her volleyball tournament. So we play it all the time in the car, right? So whatever your song is, I don't care what genre it is, rock, country, soul, jazz, right? Think about the song and in about 60 seconds, we're going to use the Zoom random selector. I don't know if you all have ever participated in this. It's kind of cool. It's like spinning the dial, and it's going to pick one of you, bring you off of mute, and ask you to just sing like a couple of bars of the chorus of your song, right? No stress. I don't know who it's going to select, but it's a really cool feature, right? So I'm going to give you roughly, 45, 60 seconds, right? And Melinda, why don't we even stop sharing the screen?
Sure.
Right.
Happy to.
Yeah, that way,
Yeah.
like we can focus on you and, us. So pick your song, right? Doesn't matter if everybody hears it. I know, I see the emojis, but it's going to be quick. All right, I'm going to zip it for 20, 30 seconds and let you think.
I always love this is my favorite exercise.
I know
So
it.
that,
I
yeah.
know it. People are so good at
Yeah,
this.
I know. I love to hear the songs.
I know. Now, if you want, when it selects you, you can come off camera too, right? That's why we stopped sharing the slides. But you can also do it, off camera, no big deal. But we want to hear your voice. All right, so Shige's going to get set in a second to do the selector, and it'll notify you. It'll be a pop-up on the screen. And we'll do maybe, a couple people. All right. Melinda, did you think of one? I've thought of
Well,
one.
I was just sitting here thinking if it were me, yeah, I
I
tried to
got,
be
I got like enough.
prepared. In case I didn't ask whether the selector selects
I
his.
know, right? I don't think it does,
Oh
but
no, Dad's starting to sweat it.
yeah, yeah. All right. Everybody take a big deep breath. I just faked you out. No singing today. I promise. It was not a real exercise. You're off the hook. I know. Look at the emojis sliding in. They're laughing or they're
I
not
know,
entertained.
I love it.
I don't know. I don't know. All right. So I know that was a little unfair, and maybe some of you knew what was happening,
Yeah, I bet some people were hip to it.
right? But before you decide that you hate me, don't throw me shade, right?
She's a very nice woman.
I know. All right. So before all that, I want you to just notice something, right? I'm going to ask Shige to put up a poll, and I want you to notice what happened in your body, the moments when you thought, is this really, are they really going to do this? Is this a real thing? Even if at first you thought I was joking, but then you were like, is she real? So Shige's going to post up our poll, same thing that's on the slides, and you can choose as many of these as you want, right? And Shige, I think this looks different than it did before, but you can select as many as you want, right? And you can even see there's a little hint. Shige gave you a cheat note at the top there that says you were probably having some kind of threat response. Take a moment. And it's okay if you felt something different, I'd absolutely be interested in that as well.
Yeah, we should have another up there.
Yeah, yeah. Shige, if you hear me and you can open up that chat real quick, I would love it if other things were coming up for people. But even if not, whoa, look at all these responses. Yes,
Started planning an
sorry.
excuse. I love
Oh my
it.
God. Yes, I'm
Yeah, I think
sorry.
that, well, yeah, yeah. Frozen
Yeah.
might have been more me. I don't know, but one of the two. Once my brain came back online, I would have started planning an excuse.
It's very, very common to feel one or more of these things. Ooh, the chat's open, Shige. Thank you. Katie said I considered leaving. Yes, they were ready. They were like, it's not going to be me. I'm going to pass, right? Yes, not in my back. Oh, that's a good one. Yes. So things like your heart racing, your stomach dropping, thinking about an excuse, being so nervous, right? And actually, some of you were kind of excited, which I'll talk about in just a moment, right? Yes, yes, yes. A splitting headache. I'm so sorry, Arvella. No, no, shake it off, right? Here's another fun brain tip. Shaking your hands like this at your sides is a cool way to interrupt your anxiety response. A lot of sports athletes use this technique. Do it for 10 seconds when you have an anxiety response. Little extra tip from me, right? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I know these simple tips, but they're not, and unless you do them, they don't work, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Oh, good, Arvella. Thank you for feeling that I was redeemed. Okay, yes, shake it off. All right, so we're gonna close down the chat, but I really appreciate these, right? Yes, people were looking up the lyrics, right, Melinda? Like our brains work.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's Ingenious.
I know,
I
genius,
never would have
right?
thought of that.
Yeah, so smart.
Great.
Yeah, so our brains go into overload. We go into threat response. And I want to remind you of what Melinda said earlier. Our brains don't know the difference between a social threat and a physical one. The same reactions are happening in our bodies and our minds, right? And so what you experienced was a genuine threat response. Your brain didn't distinguish between the physical or the social. The cortisol surge that happens in a threat response is real. We all, right? Melinda talked about those chemicals.
And I just want to underscore that the amygdala, which is the thing that's, shooting off all these chemicals, doesn't know whether it doesn't know whether it's a real or a perceived threat, right? So it's triggering when it perceives a threat. It doesn't really know, right? Didn't know whether you'd get picked to sing or not, but that perception there that you were, it's all it knew.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Leticia in the chat, right? I'm not going to scare you anymore. I will try very hard not to give you any more threat responses. But let me just share with you that short activity touched on several of those scarf domains that Melinda went over, right? Status, like, hey, am I going to be judged by people by singing? Maybe my peers are here too and they're going to hear it. Certainty, right, was another one. The C in scarf. Am I going to be picked? Is that Zoom random selector thing even real? It is, by the way. Autonomy, right? I don't have any control over this situation. I'm going to at least have to say something or go off, if they pick me. And even fairness, I think gets hit on, right? It's unfair of her to put us in this position. She told us, this is a webinar. So 4 out of the 5 scarf domains got tapped in just that little exercise. Can you imagine what's happening in real time in workplaces, right? So your colleagues and your employees, right, experience versions of this same thing every day, right? They're put on the spot in a meeting or somebody calls them out for a piece of information that they don't readily have. And, they don't know if they're in trouble, if a decision is made without them and they didn't get to weigh in, their boss doesn't like their idea, right? All of those are triggers, right? They might be smaller, but the biology is identical. That's what leads to conflict, right? Those moments really underlay and escalate conflict in the workplace. So I want to also just tap gently on the folks who selected E. I'm actually kind of excited, right? Because that's real. And I think 20 or 25 of you actually said that, right? And for some of you, it was more of a reward state than a threat state. Same situation, different response. And I always think that's exactly why understanding individual scarf profiles of you and others really matters because a lot of us were assuming I wouldn't be excited, but then you had 25 people who said they were, right? And so getting to know this brain science can really help you understand how everyone is different and there are ways for you to recognize and adapt your own behaviors and in the way that you work with others, colleagues and employees included. So let me share a little bit about the research behind all of this. Um, if you haven't heard of it, the Gallup Q12 is a scientifically validated survey tool. It was developed by Gallup, right, the research and consulting firm, and it assesses employee engagement, right? And it has 12 very specific questions that capture employee perceptions of their workplace. It focuses on like what they need, their experiences, their emotional connection to work. And they've had 25 million employees surveyed across 195 countries. A lot of research to independently validate the same needs, those same 5 scarf domains come out across all those countries, right? Across our entire, globe, the same 5 things. David Rock, right, from the Neuro Science Institute, identified through all of his research and this survey, and it really tells us something powerful, right? These aren't like preferences. These are actually, and they're not personality types either. They're hardwired needs for every human. The biology is universal. Scarf and the analysis works because it's how everybody's brain is built this way, right? There are nuances, but everybody is built this way. So I'm going to give you 2 quick examples of things that showed up in the Q12 survey. So, interestingly, clarity of expectations, which is certainty, right? Certainty on the scarf, is described by Gallup as probably the most basic employee need, right? Let me say that again. Clarity of expectations is the one that comes out as like the basic need for all employees. And there are substantial gains in this area that correlate with productivity. So if you can help an employee feel, I know what's expected of me, more certain about their job, it actually has a 5 to 10% correlation that they will be more productive. It's a gain. So the more certain I feel, the more productive and effective I'm going to be, right? If you could make every one of your employees 10% more productive, right? By simply having them feel like they know what's expected of them, that's a big deal. There's another example I want to share. Gallup found that there is no significant correlation between external factors like compensation, bonuses, right? Um, but having opinions that count in the workplace, that really showed up as something that's meaningful to employees, right? It's autonomy and relatedness that count the most. If I know that my opinions count in my workplace, right? That is what really works to make me more engaged and a better worker, not the pay and the compensation. I know some of you are like, that's not true. I tell you what, if they gave me a bonus, I'd take it right now. And I agree with you. Absolutely, right? I'm not saying it doesn't count, but the correlations are much higher for these five intrinsic factors, right? And interestingly, you don't have to intend to threaten somebody for a threat response to occur. A lot of us will say, well, just because they're reading that email that way, that's not how I meant it, right? But even a quick email or skipping somebody from being invited to a team meeting or an off the cuff comment, that's enough to shut down somebody's ability to collaborate and listen. So we're really looking for ways to put them into more of a reward state.
Yeah, and one of the things that comes up from my mind is this idea between intention and impact, right? Your intentions, you may have just forgotten to invite somebody. Your intention was not nefarious in any way, but the impact is significant as a result. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. Absolutely. So I'd like to make this just a little more personal for all of you that are here, right? This is a 1 hour webinar. We're giving you tastes of everything. We talked about SCARF in general terms, right? But every brain is wired slightly differently, even though the brain science is consistent across. We are wired differently. Some of us get triggered more by one category than another. Some of us maybe get triggered more by a status threat, whereas others of us might be triggered more by like a fairness threat, right? So, knowing which one is your most sensitive domain is kind of the first step in learning how to manage your own reactions, which contribute to the trajectory of conflict.
and I just want to reflect, at the top of this webinar, we asked you what motivated you, right, in the workplace, and this is what threatens you in the workplace, what triggers you in the workplace, and I'll be curious to see the comparison of results.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Shige, if you would launch poll 4 for us, and I know we're going to kind of push you to select just one this time, but which one do you think kind of triggers a threat response most significantly for you? And for those of you who are like, well, it depends on if I'm at work or at home, you're right. So just pick one and answer it. This is a lot about workplace, so maybe you want to pick at work. Take just a couple seconds, select which one is most for you. I want to see everybody participating in this. All right. Woo,
Ooh,
pretty.
look at the head to head to head.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Oh, very, very, and I know some people didn't participate, but very even, within.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see a thumbs up of it's not give me a thumbs up if this was easy for you to identify your single most trigger domain. Aha, yeah, great. Good. You knew it. Okay, good.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And probably a lot of people aren't doing their thumbs up, right? Because they're like, ah,
Well, exactly. Yeah, you're
yeah.
correct. Point well taken. Yes.
So, a couple things I just want to normalize for everybody. Everybody has triggers, right? Like it is okay to feel one or all of these, right? Very normal. Like I said, they studied that in the Gallup Q12 poll, right? This is for everybody out there. And as I hinted at, the results usually vary by the role that you're thinking about it from, right? So, like individual contributors and managers are going to score differently on this, right? Because they're coming from a different mindset. Or maybe in your particular work environment, it's something is required, right? Certainty is absolute because you're doing things that are very, scientific and specific, and you need a lot of certainty, right? So it can be guided by your role, the type of work you do. It also really depends. You might be triggered at home by something that doesn't trigger you at work, or maybe you're triggered in a particular relationship at work, right? Some kind of context with one person that doesn't play out in your friendships. So we get that all of this depends. But we're going to talk a little bit more about how this all shows up in conflict, and then particularly at work, what can you do? So I think, Melinda, I'm heading over to you.
Yeah, you certainly are. And I'm moving on. All right. And we're going to do a little bit of practical application. We have about a little less than 15 minutes for this, and we might make sure we hold a little bit of time out for Q&A if folks have it. So we talked about scarf and conflict, and really, again, I'm going to sort of bring home this is a diagnostic tool for you about yourself and about others. So we want to kind of go over just a few things. One is that as you think through these things, missed deadlines, the email, a lot of things that Tara was just talking about, those are symptoms, right? That are connected to or underlie one of these scarf domains or multiple scarf domains. So what you really want to do is to get underneath the symptom, right, and figure out what's really happening, what's being threatened, really pull it apart so that you can get at what is most important and not just deal with negotiation over deadlines, right? That probably won't get it for you next time. And when these areas go unaddressed in some way, that's when it really opens itself up to conflict with another person. And really, in order to diagnose what's happening, you need to spend some time and figure out what's going on in you and what may potentially be going on in the other person. Are you going to know it specifically and be able to really label it? Probably not, but by you thinking in these domains, it is going to help you try to isolate what you can do and what's happening to resolve this in the longer, more permanent term. So, want you to look at a scenario, and we're going to play around with this kind of diagnosis thought. Two colleagues disagree in a team meeting, and it turns personal. Which scarf domain do you believe is most at play in this situation? We're going to ask for another poll, one more poll in this scenario. What do you think might be happening when two colleagues disagree in a team meeting? So it's somewhat public, and then it turns personal in some way.
See if you can answer real quick because we're going to go through some of these scenarios because we want to get to the things that also you can do to prevent, be aware.
Exactly. I think really we maybe only want to go through one scenario, Tara, and then move on because we just have about 10 minutes to do that. So let's see what folks talked about status. That seems to be the one that seemed to be quite the leader. Relatedness and autonomy are also. So yeah, all of those I think are at play in this situation. So in terms of status, absolutely, both people, right, are involved in it hitting in the area of status. And when that is compounded, it could be compounded in a virtual setting, right? Camera on, camera off. Who all is invited at the team meeting, who heard it, who didn't, how personal did it get? All of those different kinds of things are going to, sort of beef up the trigger response there. But when this happens, rational thought decreases. I want to go to the next slide. You can close that poll, Shige.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me go here.
Mhm.
Um, you know, it fires, defensiveness rise, rational thought drops. Again, your mind is hardwired to sort of close down in that particular setting. So what helps, right? Again, we would probably be doing this more interactive in terms of asking you what you might help in this situation. But acknowledging, and we do a lot in our other courses around just this the simple act of acknowledging that this is something that might be going on for both of you is important. You might need to move to one-on-ones depending on how it is. But really, you're trying to separate the idea from the people, and I always hate that terms of not making it personal because a lot of people it is in fact very personal. But maybe what it sounds like in practice is, Maria, I really hear what you're saying, and we see this differently. And I'm hoping that we can both put our concerns on the table, hear what others have to say in the meeting, and that this is something that the team can work on to help solve together, right? So trying to acknowledge what's happening there and really putting the real issue of this is a team, a team dilemma, if you will, and we all need to weigh in, and everybody feels differently, is a way to try to help that.
Yeah. I also appreciate that people added other domains, right? We're talking about status as the primary one, but you all have learned many things get triggered. So in our fuller courses, we go through some really specific scenarios that are very common to the workplace. I'm going to skip us ahead to talk about sort of whether you're managing a conflict or you're in it. Like, what do you do, right? We promised you a really cool diagnostic tool, and I think this is important to get to. So, when you are in or managing a conflict, here are the 5 things you can ask yourself, right, to help out the situation and really be aware of what's getting triggered. So, the first one around status is, does anybody in this situation feel disrespected, undervalued, or publicly diminished? Anytime it happens in public, and by that I mean like in an open office setting, in a team meeting, on a virtual call, right? If there's like that others are watching feel, that's always going to trigger things for people. And status is usually the first one. Oh my gosh, this is happening in front of others. What are they going to think about me? So the question to ask yourself is, does anyone feel disrespected, undervalued, publicly diminished? Then, this is again diagnosing where you are in this situation. Certainty. Is there ambiguity about the roles, the expectations, or the outcomes that are fueling this tension? If there are, you can make that more explicit and clear, right? You can say, let's get clear on whose roles, when things are due, timelines. Autonomy is also at play always, right? So you can ask yourself, does somebody feel like maybe they've lost control or they're being controlled? Now, a lot of you answered earlier on in our polls, right, that you like to have a sense of control over the work that you do, right? You want to be able to do it. That was your number one. So anytime the answer to this question is yes, right? That should remind you, ooh, I need to help them feel like they've got a little bit of control over how to get the work done, over how to meet our deadlines. Then there's relatedness, right? You want to ask, is there a trust or belonging breakdown, right? If you're in a situation where your colleagues or employees don't trust each other, don't know each other well, have never been in a conflict situation, right? That breakdown is happening, and you're going to have to kind of work on connecting them and being more related to themselves and the work. And then lastly, fairness, asking yourself, does anyone perceive the process or the outcome as inequitable, right? If they don't see that it's balanced in some way, it's triggering that threat response. So these are 5 questions, but the domains often stack up, right? You're not going to solve all 5 of these, even if all 5 are being triggered, right? You're going to identify 1 or 2 primary threats and address those. That alone, even just one, can de escalate the conflict, even if it seems like it's going off the rails, right? So remember, this works at home and at work. So if you ask yourself these questions in a quick diagnostic, like what the heck's going on here? And the answer is yes to any of these. You can go after one of them, try to reduce it, and it's going to help you in that conflict situation. So remember that quick reference card. I'm going to ask Amanda to drop it in the chat one more time, right? because we're trying to make this stick with you, we designed this downloadable, printable, quick reference card with the 5 questions, right? You can refer to it anytime. I have teams who post it in their office, right? So, Amanda, if you wouldn't mind dropping that card in the chat so that everybody gets it, right?
Yeah. I
And
actually have it on the scarf on a with the keywords on a
yeah,
post-it for my
yes,
by my desk.
thank
Just to
you.
keep run it through. Yeah.
Yes, yes, you're right. Thanks, Amanda. So, if you remember nothing else today, I'm going to go to this next slide. We have talked a lot, and your brain's like, okay, what do I need to remember, right? If you remember nothing else, you're going to remember this SOS framework. We're going to quickly teach you, right? The SOS framework anchors you when you realize one or more of your own scarf domain is being activated, right? I don't love that word triggered, so I'm going to use activated in a conflict situation, right? So, step 0, before you do the SOS, you have to know what your threat response feels like in your body. Get to know what happens in your body. Do you get sweaty palms? Do you get the heart drop? Do you get the tummy ache, right? Start to become more aware with it because that's like the big flashing light to tell you, right? This is your alarm bell that I'm about to go into a threat response or I'm in there. Name it out loud, right? Like, whoo, I'm feeling a threat response myself right now, right? Because when you name it out loud to yourself, right, even in your office, it opens up some options. Your brain starts to recognize, wait, there are options. So then we're going to do SOS very quickly. First one, stop, stop what you're doing, pause, and disengage your brain. Just like, wait a minute, I need to pause, take a beat. 1, 2. Then you're going to oxygenate. You're going to breathe, right? Because oxygen inhibits cortisol, right? The cortisol's happening when you're in threat. And you're going to take 2 short breaths and a long exhale. 2 short breaths, long exhale sends the
Yeah.
oxygen.
And if you're in front of somebody and you can't do that, just have controlled breathing, right? Very softly take in and breathe out and have your mind think of the air going through your body. Sometimes we can't do 2 shorts and a long but just get some oxygen in your system by realizing because you're probably holding your breath, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So stop, oxygenate, and then you're going to seek information. What's being triggered in me? What do I need to do to remove the trigger? Right. So give me a quick thumbs up, right? Using your emoji, right? If you commit to trying this SOS sometime in the next week or two.
And when I on the seek information, what I think of it is I like to talk to my amygdala, frankly. So I ask myself, what does the amygdala need to know to chill out, right? What is it? So if my boss calls and says they need to see me immediately, I say, and what is that about, ma'am? I'd like to be prepared. Whatever it is that because otherwise I'm thinking I'm in trouble, right? I'm getting fired, I'm whatever. But if I can ask that one question, what's the topic? Then if she says you're going to be fired, then all right, then I'm triggered. But otherwise,
Yeah.
I can calm down.
So we only have 2 minutes left. I'm going to offer very quickly on the screen some strategies, right? We tried to pack so much into this webinar.
We did too
But
much, clearly. Yeah.
yeah, but here's what we're going to do. We are going to send you out the next slide, Melinda, if you very quickly show
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
These are tips, strategies for you to use to hopefully minimize the threat in these social domains and maximize the reward state, right? Everything from using people's names, giving specific praise, asking how are you and meaning it, right? Waiting for the answer, letting teams come up with their own norms, right? These are some great tips. We will send them to you, but I also want to share with you some of our courses that really dive into this. So quickly, let's share this and then I want to let Q&A happen.
In the 1 minute we have left.
Yeah, yeah, the course.
Well, yeah, this is our first time running this webinar, so we
So
realize we need to work on our pacing a bit.
yeah, yeah. So just real quickly, Melinda, the two I think I want to highlight are these 1 day courses coming up. Manager is Mediator, which really helps you think about things through a conflict lens as a manager. It's a great course coming up in June. We're also running what's called using AI to prepare for difficult conversations. It's really fascinating. It's sort of embracing what AI can do, warning you what it can't do, and working with it as a thought partner to prepare for tough things at work. And then there's lots of others, right? So you'll be getting information about this. I know that some of you might have questions. If you want to stay 2 minutes later, we absolutely will answer them. Lots here. I'm also going to drop a link for Melinda and I, our email addresses. Melinda, do you want to share that slide? If you have questions, right?
No, we don't have that one. We're gonna have to drop that in the chat
All
first.
right. I'm going to drop it in the chat for my email,
Uh,
and
yeah,
Melinda will
and
drop hers.
or the work better. If you could just for both of us,
Yeah.
you can get work better.
Yeah, so absolutely. So want to thank each and every one of you for being here. You're on the cutting edge because you came to the first webinar. You can tell we've got lots to teach you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. If we didn't answer your question, stay, put it in the Q&A and we'll answer it. Everybody else, have an amazing day and check out our courses on Graduate School USA. Take care,
Bye.
everyone.